Joining me now, three of my favorite political analysts, all CNN contributors. Democratic strategist Robert Zimmerman, Carol Swain, professor of political science and professor of law at Vanderbilt University, also editor of Debating Immigration. Great to have you with us. And New York Daily News columnist Errol Louis, also the host of The Morning Show on WWRL in New York. Great to have you with us, Errol. Well, let's start with, good grief, the gay rights activists going after the president-elect. Just on the issue of the evangelical pastor, Rick Warren, giving the invocation at his inaugural.
It's about the issue of an evangelical pastor who's using the pulpit to preach prejudice, who's using faith to preach fear. That's what the issue is here. His comments, now let me be very clear, I morally believe in the rights of gay and lesbian Americans to marry, and I think it should be protected by law. Right. And I understand why Barack Obama is trying to reach out and build dialogue with people we don't agree with, and I respect that. Right. But this minister's comments are demeaning and they're offensive, not just to gay Americans, but to all people who value human dignity and decency.
All right, what do you think?
Well, I disagree. I think that he is someone that speaks for a large number of Americans, and he's not preaching intolerance. There are some biblical principles that many Americans believe in that are guiding his words and his actions. And I think that he is someone that Barack Obama should reach out and should listen to, and especially if he wants to win over some of those Americans who didn't support him and are unsure of who he is. We want to know who he is, and I think that was a good gesture.
My sense is that this is the wrong fight to pick and the wrong guy to pick it with. Barack Obama has been open to the gay and lesbian concerns. He's not in favor of gay marriage, but he hasn't gone out and really sort of tried to fight against it. So, you know, there's going to have to be some politics. There's going to have to be some dialogue and some conversation. This is a pretty awkward note on which to start that conversation, telling the man who he can associate with. I mean, you know, what almost sank his campaign were complaints about him associating with a minister that a lot of people didn't like. I would think that real allies of Barack Obama would say, you know what, let's let this one sit for a little bit. Maybe we can get him behind closed doors and tell him about our concerns.
This president has said that he is going to be inclusive, and he said he's going to be the president of all the folks, all the people. Is there some point in this country where we're going to have to say, you know, we're going to have to try to move to the center here? We're going to have to understand we're going to disagree about some issues. They're not going to be resolved, and we're not going to fight to the death over them. Is such a time possible soon?
I think that time is now, and I think the urgency of the issues facing our nation and the world are bringing people together. So I think there's no question that's happening. This, however, I can certainly respect the rights of the leadership of the gay and lesbian community.
Oh, sure. I think it's not an issue of not respecting someone's views. Yeah. It's an issue of proportion, I think, and perspective and the value of the inclusiveness that Barack Obama has said, at least, and I think sent a pretty strong message, both literally and symbolically, that he's going to be inclusive. We'll see if he walks the walk. But so far, right. I'd say, I don't know about you, I'd say he's walking the walk.
Well, it's worth also pointing out the closing prayer, the benediction, will be given by Joseph Lowery, a civil rights activist going back many decades, who was controversial in his own right. I'm sure there's some folks out there who don't particularly approve of him. We'll wait to see if we hear from them.
This would be a very interesting country, would it, if we didn't have a little spice, you know? I mean, right? Let's turn to Caroline Kennedy. Speaking of spice, I mean, she's got an uproar going in New York City. Do you think somebody with a last name, whether it be Bush or Clinton or Kennedy, ought to have the easy pass to whatever they want politically?
That seems to be the way America works, especially when it comes to the Senate. You have to have money or you have to have fame. I think that's unfortunate, and this would have been a great opportunity for the governor to appoint someone that had worked really hard for the position.
We're going to be back with our panel in just a moment, but first, let's turn to Campbell Brown coming up at the top of the hour. What are you working on, Campbell?
Hey there, Lou. In just a few minutes, a glimmer of hope for automakers and auto workers coming from the White House. The president suggesting that the administration will likely step in before the new administration comes in. Ali Velshi is going to be here to explain what this may mean to tens of thousands of people who've been waiting for word on whether they will still have jobs in the new year. Also tonight, Lou, the difficult case of a little girl taken away from her adoptive parents in Tennessee and then taken back to China by her birth parents. We have found her, and as you'll see in tonight's exclusive report, she's 8 years old, living in a country where she doesn't speak the language. The mother and father, forced to give her up, are going to tell their story coming up tonight. Lou?
All right, thank you, Campbell. And we'll be back with our panel in one moment. We're back with Robert Zimmerman, Carol Swain, and Errol Louis. Errol, your thoughts on the likely ascendancy, if you will, of Caroline Kennedy to the Senate?
Well, she took an important step by traveling to some of these remote places upstate that a lot of politicians from the city don't really like to spend a lot of time in. She seems to have had a good time. She's sitting down with people.
She had a good time.
Well, she says she had a good time. She says she had a good. Syracuse is lovely this time of year, I'll have you know.
She wouldn't answer the question, have you been in Syracuse before?
That's not a remote place in our state. It's one of our great cities.
Wait a minute, this is Errol's story.
Sorry, excuse me.
Well, if you spend time in Manhattan, you live in Manhattan as she does, among the wealthy and the powerful, that is a remote. That's a long distance trip. In all seriousness, we have a chance to decide whether or not to retain her in 2010. She has to run for the seat.
Oh, so you've got her already appointed. And that's an issue of retention.
It would not be the end of the world.
Let's go to Robert Zimmerman.
As I mentioned to you last week, very clearly, she has to demonstrate that she has the leadership, the ambition, and the skills to do this job. And the first way she could do it is by, in fact, getting rid of all the handlers and start speaking to the issues, which she hasn't done yet. But bringing in Mayor Bloomberg's top team to help guide her campaign also, I think,
speaks to... If you're a multimillionaire, it doesn't hurt to have a billionaire behind
I'm not worried about dynasties. I'm worried about plutocracies. But, of course, Mayor Bloomberg can see upstate New York from his townhouse, with apologies to Tina Fey.
Well, I have to say, it's remarkable where we're headed with the power of the elites in this country. Does anybody remember when it was a democracy? Thanks for being with us tonight. Good night from New York. Campbell Brown, No Bias, No Bull, starts right now.